So in case the title didn't make it obvious, we're going to be talking about Prinz Eugen here today. But before we get into anything like stats, equipment, etc., let's first discuss the history of Prinz Eugen and the fact that within the Kriegsmarine, she found herself eventually becoming known as the Lucky Eugen. Now, Germany found itself in a fairly bad position with the Kriegsmarine versus, say, the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy, just simplistically put, had numerical superiority above all else and could afford to take higher levels of risks within its naval operations than Germany could ever even begin to think of taking. Because of this, things had to be handled very differently from the Kriegsmarine side to the Royal Navy side. But that stated, the Prinz Eugen still finds itself getting into a lot of situations and then getting right back out of them, including situations such as escaped serious harm from the July of 40 magnetic mine in April of 41. 104 or so enemy naval units fire from British coastal artillery batteries, although severely damaged by sailing backfire to Germany with fired so many rounds during offensive operations. Her barrels needed 46 RAF aircraft firing a 34 Lancaster strong bombing plus rounds of ammunition through the Baltic. Was one of only two major Kriegsmarine even survived not one but two nuclear attacks before ultimately, in terms of their condition, by the end of the war, by a unrepaired leakage. Wait, is that what we could call the end of her luck? Of course, once we view the history of a ship girl Nageline, how about we talk about their character a little bit, as I feel at the end of the day, in Azurlane, it is more about how we enjoy our characters than anything, and if you find enjoyment in your character, then hey, there you go. That's what it's really truly about at the end of the day anyways. When it comes to that, Prinz Eugen is definitely quite the glorious ship, full of loads of personality. She's extremely playful and just comes off with an air about her like she's just fun-loving and is not so serious. She's actually a really great contrast to the rest of the KMS ships, as some of the rest of them can prove themselves to be more than slightly on the serious side, and sometimes just downright edgy, if we're to be entirely honest. So Prinz Eugen is a very refreshing breath of air when compared to a lot of her sister ships. And of course, I mean, come on. Her design is beautiful and gorgeous, and she almost always seems to be having her designs including something pretty awesome. I mean, look at this right here, her big shark hydra-like thing that's behind her that's like, I don't know, made out of energy or something in this scenario. I'm not fully certain, but it's absolutely amazing. And the little animation sets she gets her for Chibi, like right here, they're great. So as far as character goes, I mean, absolutely amazing. But of course, more important than that, people want to talk stats. And when we're talking stats, things get more than slightly different for Prinz Eugen from there. When we look at her stats, we quickly notice, well, there's just one thing that goes on with her, and maybe we should just go back to her personality. Can we talk about that? But of course, no. We need to be looking at her performance, and even from surface value, it looks like it's mainly just her health points that has her being such a strong ship. And this isn't exactly incorrect. Sometimes this little chart thing here, to be entirely honest about it, is misleading, to say the least. But in this scenario, it is not being all that misleading. Prinz Eugen is more than slightly lacking in quite a few territories. She is far from one of the better cruisers for torpedoes. In fact, she's in the top 5 worst. But then again, she's a heavy cruiser that has torpedoes all the same, so it's something, right? And then when we start to talk about her anti-air, well, her anti-air doesn't really get all that much better there either. She's at least not one of the top worst, but she's pretty far away from being one of the better ones. She's not all that great at anti-air. And then even when you start talking about firepower, which should be a heavy cruiser's, that should be their thing. This should be where they're great. And yet she's actually pretty far behind quite a few of the other cruisers, even in this department, with her firepower being a little on the lacking side. All that said, though, she does still have a few things going for her. Even though her firepower is sadly really low, her reload is, ironically enough, in the top 10. She's one of the better cruisers for her reload, so it's something. But at the end of the day, we all know what makes her a great ship. It is her health pool. She has the highest health pool of any cruiser outside of, priority ships. And even then, there's only one with more, and that's Azuma. With a health pool when at level 120 base of 6,252, she more than slightly leads the pack. With the third highest of Rune being 5,920, and all the rest of the cruisers, such as St. Louis and so on, are only in 5,300 and less. This means most other cruisers, when compared to Prinz Eugen, have anywhere around 1,000 or more HP less than she does. Her health pool is where things become, needless to say, massive about her. And everything else is just, it's aight. It's not great. It's aight. But that said, this isn't to say she isn't without, at least a few things. She does have, of course, an all-out assault right here. But as we can even see when it does fire, it speaks for itself. You can see it. I don't think I need to comment on all that much. Then again, remember, we're not looking at a firepower cruiser here. So her all-out assault that you're going to get when you do your first limit breaking, it's neither here nor there. It's something. Her main ability is, of course, Unbreakable Shield. Every 20 seconds, 70% chance to deploy 3 rotating shields when it is at level 10 here. And they can each block up to 10 shells. Shields last for 10 seconds. Now these shields are, again, a neither here nor there sort of thing. They definitely have their advantages and disadvantages. It's not going to block your main sources of damage that are incoming from, opponents. It's not going to do anything about torpedoes. It's not going to do anything about planes that are coming in, etc. It's mainly just going to be helping you with auxiliary fire, secondary fire, however you may or may not want to word it. That said, this still isn't exactly a bad thing. It's some kind of damage reduction. It's better in some scenarios than others. With a little bit of damage reduction combined with her massive health pool, yeah, we can start to see where Prinz Eugen shines through. She's tanky. Really tanky. Plus, she also has the medium armor type, meaning she's not extremely vulnerable to torpedoes and, aircraft like heavy armored ships would be. But instead, she's pretty vulnerable to, armor piercing. So, of course, then we're going to have to talk about how are we going to build for Prinz Eugen. Well, this right here is essentially the 2 different ways I'd go about making her. You can interchange whatever you see here in any way you basically want, but you're going to go one of 2 different routes, I personally feel. You're going to either go a route where you're going to try to get a little more firepower on her, and you're going to run the 2 different, radars right here, so she can actually hit a bit harder like some other cruisers can. What is this combined with her naturally high reload rate? She can actually do some fairly okay damage. The other route you can go with her is just going a tanky route, which is where you put a anti-torpedo bulge and a repair toolkit on her to give her a bunch. It gives her a bunch of health. It gives her, passive health regen. Duh. And it also reduces the amount of damage she'll take from torpedoes, which, really helpful. And from there, of course, when you start talking about the torpedoes you're going to use, you're going to either use, your either one of these quintuples. The 533s are going to go with some good old German magnetic ones. Whatever you may or may not have available will work fine here. Don't worry too much about her torpedoes, because remember, or her torpedo stat, I mean, not all that great. And since her firepower is not exactly the best, I wouldn't worry about having your best weapon on her. Save it for, an actual firepower, heavy cruiser instead of her. It's just kind of the truth. And with that stated, since, she's really, really tanky, that is the route I would take with her. She has a huge health pool. So dig into that, make her tanky, and then get some, really high firepower ships on your side. You could easily have London retrofit roll with her, put London in the middle position to try and avoid her taking too awful much damage, and have ships like Prinz Eugen with her to keep her alive and continue pumping out the damage. This is just one example of a route you can take. So last but not least, is she PvP or is she PvE? Is she mob or is she boss? Well, to be entirely honest about it, she doesn't have a particularly high amount of damage. She's more so, again, mainly just a really tanky ship. So when you start talking about mob fleets, there's better routes to go than her. I would not mob fleet with her. But as far as boss fleets, PvE fleets, these are the kind of fleets that you're going to want to be looking at when we are talking about a Prinz Eugen being put to effective use. And with that stated, that is my thoughts on Prinz Eugen. How would I rate her? Well, in terms of her design as a character, she is easily a 10 out of 10. I feel she's one of the better designed characters in the game. Playability wise, how useful is she? I would give her maybe an 8 out of 10. Some would maybe argue that's still being maybe a little too generous. She is definitely not the best. In fact, she's kind of far away from it. But she's definitely not bad either. She has good uses. She can definitely, help you bring home that home run. So I do feel like 8 out of 10 is a pretty solid one to give her. And with that stated, one more thing to everyone. Is there a ship girl that you want me to cover on? Then please, of course, let me know down in the comment section below. Bear in mind, I don't just touch on their usability and show builds and that sort of thing. I will, of course, touch on the history or the theoretical side of things if it's a ship that was never completed. I'll break down their story elements, how good of a characters they are, at least a little bit. Depending on the character, I might get really in-depth within it. So bear that in mind. That is what I want to do and be to try and differentiate a little bit from a lot of these other kind of videos that already exist out there that are mainly just like, here's the history of them. Are they good or not? Here's how I'd run them. I want to go a little more than that. I want to go another step than that. I want to actually kind of discuss their character a little bit more, etc. So expect a lot more of that in the future. And with that, thank you so much to my patrons. Links are, of course, in the description below. I will be seeing all of you in another video sometime. Take it easy.
Don't feel fucking